Welcome back! In this episode we service the engine using an engine maintenance kit and then we take it out for a spin to make sure it's all working properly. Stay tuned. Holy moly! Now that didn't go to plan. I think it's worse than before. Okay, to get this project underway, we've ordered in some parts. So let's see what we've got. And an engine service kit suited to the Kohler 18 horsepower. Included in the kit, we get 2 bottles of oil, the air filter that's suited to the mower. With the Kohler motors or engines, ensure you buy the kit which has the correct air filter. When you go to order, you will see a little illustration. So some of the filters will just be the panel filter. The other type has a pre-filter sitting on top. You also get a new oil filter, spark plug, fuel filter, and a handy little maintenance sticker. Same as with your car. Record when the changes were done and stick that somewhere on the mower. The other option which I like to do is just to write the hours on the side of the oil filter. It's there, clear in view. You can look down, say, okay, this was done 50 hours ago, we need to do it again, and you compare it with the hour meter on your mower. Rightio. It's quite easy, you lift the bonnet. So this is a Kohler Courage series motor, it's 18 horsepower. It's pretty easy to work on really. Got your fuel filter here, oil filter. This is your oil drain down here, which I just learned how to use. I've never changed the oil on this, so it's something new. Your air filter housing, and I've pulled the top off before. We had some wiring dramas before. We had a few dramas over the last couple of months, which turned out to be the ignition switch. I think it just got full of dust and started shorting the thing out. First thing you need to do is remove this engine cover so we can get to the spark plug on the other side. It's pretty easy. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4 8mm bolts which hold it on. That lifts off and away you go. Once you get the cover off, you can see the spark plug hidden down in here. So I was just taking the lead off, pulling the spark plug out and putting a new one back in. Okay, the next step is to drain the oil. So here's the oil drain valve. It's quite simple, you just pop the cap off. And then when you buy these new, you get a drain line apparently. But what I've done is I've got some 13mm tube which goes straight on. Cut it to around about 600 to 700 mils long, and then you just slide it on over the fitting like so, and then it can drain down into your oil drain tray. And then it's a simple case apparently. Again, I haven't actually done this before. Turning this counterclockwise, and you can sort of see in here there's a little slot that it turns into, and then you simply just pull it out and your oil starts coming out. Brilliant. Now don't do what I just did and try to pull this out further to see if it would drain any quicker. The whole fitting comes out and you end up with oil everywhere. Just let it do its thing. It's pretty slow, but obviously it works. Now we're going to change the air filter. It's pretty simple. Just undo these holding knobs. and release it off. I took this off the other day, and because we drive through a fair bit of dust out here, I thought it'd be a good idea if we're pulling this thing apart to do the service on it. I think it's well overdue, to be honest. Filters weren't terrible, but they weren't great either. Pull the cover off. I've obviously wiped it out recently. It's not terrible inside. And there's your filter. So this is the thing I was saying at the start. When you get the service kit for your ride-on, particularly if it's got a Kohler motor, you need to make sure you get the right filter. So they have different filters for obviously different series of motors, but this seems to be the identifying thing. If you don't know exactly what the series is, the air filters do differentiate the different series of motors. So in our case, I had to make sure it had this upper section, which normally has a pre-filter on it. So we'll pull this off. And install the new one, which is still slightly different to the one I had on there, but I think it's actually better. So this is a genuine Kohler filter. So they've obviously updated the design because the gasket on the top portion does rip, and then you just put your pre-filter foam in the top there. I'll tidy that up and then put the cover back on. Okay, so got the air filter in. I tried to cut the top gasket off the filter, off the old filter, and put that on, but it just doesn't work with the pre-filter, so I'm assuming that's why they leave it off now. I've also put the new fuel filter in. Also noticed it's just one of these things working on something that someone else has already been into. It's missing a clamp off here and a clamp off here. I did check before I started this, and I've got some clamps, but they're just a tad too big, so we'll go down tomorrow, get some new clamps, put the new oil filter on. Also filled it full of oil. I don't think it's probably that critical with these things, but it's a rule of habit that I generally do with oil filters. If you can, they're sideways, you can't do too much about it, but when you just screw them up from underneath, I think it's a good idea to fill them full of oil. That way it's got oil pressure to start off with. This is extremely slow in draining, but we're slowly getting there. So I'll give it a few more minutes and then we'll top it all up. The other important thing to note is you want to put the cover back on, because the oil dipstick goes in through the top of the cover. So I mean, you can do it with the cover off, but you then have to remember to pull the dipstick out, because you then can't put the cover in back over the top. I believe this takes about 1.5 litres of oil. So I've put some into the filter, obviously. Then I'll fill it up and I'll just check it as we go. Right, I'm going to call this done. So what we do now is we push the valve back in and close it. You want to do that before you try to pull this tube off, or else you end up in the same situation I did before, where you pull the whole valve off the fitting at the other end. So this way it's locked in, it's locked closed. Now you can pull the hose off. Try not to make too much of a mess. Put that to the side. And then put the cap back on. It's as simple as that. Now we'll go and put some oil in. We should be done. Okay, that's our oil change done. Now we'll wait for the sun to come up tomorrow. We'll take it out for a spin. If you do a lot of work around the house and you've never worn gloves before, get yourself some nitrile gloves. They are fantastic. They keep all the grease off your hands. You can still feel things through them, so they're quite good to use, and they make such a difference. Now, I'll see you in the morning when we'll try out the new modifications and service to the mower. Time to start it up and go and give it a test out. Fingers crossed it all works as it should. Alright, it's a bit dark, it's very overcast and it's about to rain here, so I'm madly trying to get the lawns done. But you see by the time lapse, it all went fairly well. You'll notice it is still a little bit stripy, but it's cutting level. That's just because it's fairly long and it should have been mowed probably a week ago. It's just from the tyres tracking down. So I will call this a success. It's heaps better. It's not fantastic, it probably still needs a tiny little bit of adjustment, but that's definitely fixed the problem. So what you can see behind me here is a lot worse than what it was before, but don't worry, it's okay. What happened was, and look, it was probably me, I don't think it would have been like this before, but one of the pins for one of the front linkages of the back of the deck popped out, and it had no locking pin in it. So I'm assuming what happened was, when I went to first go and pull the deck out, I pulled the pin out and then realised you actually pull one out further down the back. So it skipped off and gave me a minor heart attack. But okay, that concludes today's episode. Hope you enjoyed watching it. We've successfully done a minor service on the ride-on, fixed the deck and got it all operational again so I can keep on mowing. Got heaps more mowing to do, so I'm going to get cracking with that. Meantime, have a great Easter. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, and please share if you can so we can get this around, and stay safe.